great movie. Immediately the idea was, well, can we make more of those? Even the people who made Jaws were like, oh, we got to make more. But, you know, it took a long time to make Jaws. It was really hard. So there were a lot of people who wanted to do Jaws ripoffs. And many of them came from overseas. And Roger Corman, no stranger to ripping things off, but also no stranger to creating movies that other people would draw. And said, well, you know, a guy came to him named Jeff Shepard who had an idea for this movie about piranhas. He was allied with a Japanese producer named Shako Van. They had a script that Roger said, well, you know, if we make this, I guess we can get it out there and, you know, ride the coattails and Jaws. And I had just done a movie for Roger called Hollywood Boulevard with Alan Arkish. The cheapest movie that Roger had ever made, which was made out of bed. And so Alan Arkish and I made that picture, and there were two projects circling around New World Pictures. One of them was Rock and Roll High School, and the other one was Piranha. Now, I was no dummy. I knew Rock and Roll High School was a much better idea for a movie than Piranha. But Alan was so crazed about rock and roll, and he had worked with the Fillmore East, and he really was the guy to make Rock and Roll High School. So I got the fish. The problem was that the script wasn't really there yet. The guy who wrote the script, who gets a co-credit for reasons I don't understand, couldn't figure out what to do when the characters in the movie found out there were piranhas in the lake, so he invented a bear to chase them into the lake. And then when he lost sight of that, he created a fire to chase the bear, It was not very good. And I said to Roger, I'd be happy to make a movie for you, Roger, but we've got to do something about this script. And his factotum, the woman who was in charge of all of his liaisons with writers, had found a guy named John Sayles. He had written a novel called Pride of the Bimbos, and it was getting a lot of attention. And she said, well, let's see if this John Sayles guy, who lives in New Jersey, would be interested in rewriting this. So I met with John, he flew out, and we talked about the movie and how to completely restructure it and change it all around from what it was to something different. And something slightly subversive, which was what John and I were into at the time. Now remember, this is a Vietnam War picture. This is a picture made during the war. It's got a lot of political undertones. You can't have to be overtones, they have to be undertones. Roger wanted to make the picture for not much money, which was his favorite thing. And so we thought we would make it here, but there was a drought. And we couldn't make it in California. I went all the way up to Oroville, I went to all these places, and everything was dry. So we ended up making it in Texas, which was a good thing for me because I was completely out of the origin of Hollywood. It was like a truly independent picture. The only issue with it was, how are we going to do the piranhas? Because, you know, we had no money. So we had a bunch of guys who had just worked on a movie called Star Wars, which hadn't come out yet. And we worked on trying to figure out a way to make these rubber fish look real. So we went down to the Olympic swimming pool at USC, and we did a lot of tests. And to make them, is it better when they're shot at 2 frames or 5 frames or 3 frames? And it was nightmarish. But Roger would insist on looking at the footage because if the piranhas weren't going to work, he wasn't going to make the picture. And in fact, Peter Fonda was asked to be in the movie, and he said, "I'm not going to do it unless the piranhas are going to be good." And I can guarantee that, so Peter didn't do it. Anyway, we finally figured out a way to do it with puppets, basically. A harbinger of my entire career. And we shot in different frame rates, and we actually managed to get some pretty good footage in this Olympic swimming pool. And so Roger came to look at all the footage we had shot, and we had all these prosthetic limbs and prosthetic legs and being eaten by these piranha fish. And so Roger watched it for a while. He said, "Okay, I guess we'll make the movie." breasts get eaten? He says, do I have to? And so we went to Texas and made the picture. And it was, I think John's script was really good for the kind of movie it was. Basically, it's a Jaws ripoff. And everybody knew it was a Jaws ripoff, as did we. So at the very beginning of the movie, we have the heroine playing a Jaws video game. Just tell the audience, yes, we know it's a Jaws ripoff. We know, now let's just get on with it. And it was, we put together a really good cast because one of the things that low-budget movies wanted to do at the time was to get as many TV names as possible, so then they could sell it to a network. So Bradford Dublin was a TV name, Keenan Wynn was a TV name, Heather Menzies was a TV name. So we got a bunch of people that allowed us to sell the picture to NBC. And the picture was quite successful, but NBC was happy to buy it. The problem was that by the time it ran on NBC, there were no piranhas in it. Because they insisted on cutting out all that stuff. Because it was too violent. So we put back all the pieces that we had cut out to make the movie shorter when we released it in theaters. So the TV version ended up being like a TV movie, except it had no piranhas in it. I don't recommend it. I don't think it's around with it to see. But it did very well overseas. It did really well in South America, where they actually know what piranhas are. In fact, there's only one character in the movie, played by Barbara Steele, who actually pronounces the word correctly. But it was, I can't say it was a lot of fun to me, but it was certainly a challenge. And I really loved working with the cast, and it's got a lot of humor. And I think it's the movie that allowed John Sayles to say, okay, this is what I want to do with my life. I'm going to take all this money, I'm going to make my own movie, and I'm going to be a director. And it was a very fortuitous combination for me because I worked with John many times after that, and he's very, very talented. And if it ain't on the page, it ain't on the stage.
So much about you and Sayles and this and The Howling is you're not precious about it, but you're also not treating it like, okay, it's for fun for you. You have so much fun with these movies, and on a tight budget, on a tight schedule, you still find a lot of little grace notes, and a lot of that just comes from, I would assume, the way you train as an editor for trailers and things like that. You have to have an eye for moments. Like, I feel like that's a thing that in these films, you don't have a ton of money, you don't have a ton of resources. It comes down to making each moment fun in its way.
No, it does help to be an editor. I learned so much from editing trailers and learning how short you can make a scene and still make it work. And then when you go on the stage, you don't need that extra line. Go each moment you cut it out of the trailer. But there's something about working for Roger that was, you've seen the litany of people that came through Roger Corman. I mean, everybody from Scorsese to Bogdanovich to Coppola to James Cameron, John and Demi. I mean, these people were people who A, had talent, and B, really wanted to make movies. And Roger was particularly good at sussing out people who really cared and really wanted to make the best women in prison movie. And all of us, even though we obviously had our issues, Roger, there's not enough money, Roger, we all had our issues, but when all was said and done, we were all friends of Roger's. When Roger passed away, last year, a couple years ago, I mean, there was nobody who had worked for him who wasn't actually his friend. And that's not something you can say about a lot of movie movies.
I don't think there's a training ground like this for filmmakers today.
No, sadly there's not. I mean, when he was working, there were first the drive-ins to play the movies, then there were video releases, and now there's no place to do that. There's no place to train people. We were making movies that we thought nobody would really see. I mean, Piranha opened during a newspaper strike. There were hardly even any reviews in that picture. But you always figured, okay, you learned something, you go into the next movie. But now, I don't think those opportunities are available, and that's why we have companies like A24 and Neon, and to be able to make offbeat, independent movies that used to be made by the studios, although by the time I worked for Roger, the studios had kind of given up on those kind of movies. But it's a completely different business, as you may have noticed. It's a completely different world right now. It's a completely different America right now. And we're all in it together. And that's why we gather in places like this to have shared experiences, because it's all we got left.
When you were done with the film, obviously you guys were coming out, not the exact same moment, but in the same time frame as Jaws 2. Universal had
Oh, they didn't like that.
Yeah.
Universal was not pleased that we were doing a Piranha ripoff, Jaws ripoff. At the same time, they had the big budget Jaws 2 movie. And so they were going to join the picture, as they had done with a number of Jaws imitations.
Yeah.
And they just said, you can't release it here, we'll see. And so they tried to have Roger not release Piranha. And apparently, I found this out many years later, apparently Steven Spielberg saw Piranha, and he said, no, you don't get it, it's a parody. It's not just a ripoff, of course it's a ripoff. it's different, and I think that brings me to the one thing that you have to try to do when you make movies, is to have your movie have a personality. And the one thing that's hard to do in a big budget movie or even a small budget movie is to maintain your personality while you're working for people who don't want the movie to have any personality, lest somebody might not like it. So the one thing that I can say, I can look back at the things I've done, they all at least look like they were made by me, for good or ill. Fine. But at least it looks like it was made by me and not some committee.
Watching this again tonight, I think it's the reason that through every generation of home video, Piranha, The Howling, these movies all get the upgrade, they all get the treatment. And there's beautiful work that Shout Factory's done on these films now. Really.
These guys do such great work. I mean, this movie looks better now than it did now. Seriously. I mean, there are things you can do now digitally that you couldn't do on film when you're timing a movie, and particularly a movie as difficult to time as this movie, where you have things that are totally don't look real, and you can make them look much more real. And also, it's a friend of mine, Jamie Anderson, was the DP, and it's really well shot. And these pictures, people used to say Roger's movies didn't look as cheap as they really were, and it's true, they didn't. And in fact, Variety used to say, one of the things that's nice about the Corman pictures is they have this lovely autumnal glow. And the reason was that all the film was exposed between 3 and 7. It was always so far behind.
And you didn't hear from Spielberg at that moment about
I didn't know Spielberg.
but you then were in the mix to do something that almost feels like it would have been redundant after this. There was a moment where you almost did Jaws 3 People 0.
Well, Jaws 3 People 0 was the movie that the National Lampoon wanted to do with the Zanuck and Brown people, and that was going to be the third Jaws movie. And the script was by Todd Carroll and John Hughes. It was, in retrospect, I haven't read it in many years. I don't think it was probably a great script, but the thing was, it would have been my first studio movie. And when I went to Universal to have my meetings, they said, hey kid, here's their storyboards. And they're already drawn. It's like, what do you mean? This is not a TV show. Everything at Universal in 1979 was treated like a TV show. And so the problem was that the Zanuck and Brown people wanted to do a serious Jaws movie, and the National Lampoon wanted to do an R-rated National Lampoon Jaws movie, and there was a lot of tension involved, and the two sides did not get along. And there was I kept thinking, is this movie ever going to really happen? And a friend of mine, Mike Fennell, was working at Apple Embassy on a movie called The Howling, where they were firing the director, and once again, rewriting the script because it wasn't very good. And he said, why don't you go over here? I said, no, I can't leave this movie. It's about my first studio picture. I really should, hold on. And so I went to a friend of mine who had gone before he got a job at Universal, and he said to me, this is a tough business, kid, but if you ever have a problem, come to me and I'll explain the whole thing. I'll help you out. So I told him, I said, so long, is this movie gonna get made or not? And he said, I'm sorry, I can't talk. I can't tell you. I said, you said you So I learned something important about working for studios. Don't.
You were the first generation making movies that were soaked in movies, soaked in the love of movies. And I feel like you guys, that your age group, you, Scorsese, Spielberg, you were movie brats. You had been raised in this. Your letters to fan magazines that you stumble across now when you go back through old Famous Monsters, or it's so much fun to see how passionate you were, even young, even before you were in this business. What would you say to somebody who is right now, with the media landscape the way it is, with the access to more movies in some ways than ever before, but less curation than ever before? How would you tell young film fans to soak themselves in it?
Well, first I tell them to go to our website, Trailers from Hell. And look at all those trailers, over 1,000 trailers narrated by filmmakers who tell you about what those movies meant to them and how it affected their work and all that kind of stuff, and turn you on to a whole lot of things you may not know about. And curation is the problem. It is true that there are so many more things to see than there ever have been before. When I was growing up, if you missed a movie on TV, you had to wait another 5 years. And when it was on really late at night, you had to put, a Clockwork Orange toothpicks in your eyes. It was the only time we're going to get to see it, and it probably would be cut, and it would be pan and scanned, and and yet my generation still grew up knowing movies, even though we saw them in the worst possible way. But there's just something about the movies that just makes everybody make movies, and even today. I mean, you wouldn't be seeing all these boutique companies coming along, trying to resuscitate slasher movies that nobody even remembers if there wasn't a real nostalgia for the kind of things that people got to see when they were learning to love movies. And if you're trying to start out in the business right now, it's very difficult. The one good thing is that the technique of making movies is much easier now. You have your own phones, you have your own computers, you can make stuff. You have AI, God knows. And the trick is, if you can make a short and get it into a festival, then you have a chance of somebody noticing it, and then you can work from there. But it's not. It's the path I took is long gone, I'm afraid.
That is discouraging, but at the same time, it does feel though, when I started watching your work, I could feel the movies that you loved in it. It wasn't though until I saw the movie Orgy, Scream at the New Beverly, that I felt like I truly got the way you digested movies when you were young. The television age of flipping through things, seeing bits and pieces of things, experiencing things that way. Because I was the first home video generation where we would watch from beginning to end what we wanted. But it was so much more haphazard for you. So that shotgun blast of stuff into you, I feel like, is a big part of why you are able to hop genre to genre so nimbly, and why you get it all, why genre seems so secondhand to you.
Well, House of Bomb is one of my favorite movies, and that's a movie where, in the course of the movie, they talk about the fact that it's a movie, and they're constantly reminding me that it's a movie. And it was interesting when I made Looney Tunes for Warner Brothers, the one thing they didn't want me to do is they didn't want me to have the cartoon characters remind people they were watching a movie. I said, you guys ever seen a cartoon? It's the movie Orgy, which, by the way, is available to be seen. The American Genre Film Archive has made a DCP, God help us, movie Orgy, the 5-hour version. It is actually screenable. Not that I'm recommending that idiots screen this, believe me. It is available, but it is pretty weird.
It's one of those experiences that you've had it with an audience. At the end of it, you've all been through something together. Later, you and Steven did become friends, and you did work together. And did you ever talk about this post all of this, and just his take on the film, or was it all the same?
Even after I heard the story, it never actually came up. It wasn't relevant at the time, so I don't remember ever talking about it.
It does feel like a lot of your career has been about crazy little things raising hell in various places.
I'm afraid so.
It's amazing how limber that is. My kids, for example, are giant Small Soldiers fans. Like, they go to maybe Gremlins too fanatic. I think Gremlins
This is the place to see Gremlins too.
I assume that's accidental. I assume that is a thing that was never on your mind, yet somehow ended up becoming a recurring thing.
I don't think people plan their careers. I think they do the things that interest them, and then, or if it doesn't interest them, they try to find a way to make it interesting, so that they can bring whatever it is they brought to the last picture, they can bring to the new picture, and then you don't know until later when you look back at all this stuff how similar some of the stuff is. That's not the way you approach it when you're actually doing it. It's all a minute-to-minute thing.
Have you seen your work echo in young filmmakers? Do you see stuff sometimes and you go, oh?
I've seen Stranger Things, if that's what you mean.
Aside from Stranger Things, it's a good feeling when you realize that your work has participated, that there are young people who've seen it.
I've had a number of filmmakers who tell me that they like my stuff, and that's always nice to hear. I mean, I said that when I met filmmakers that I like, I never said I'm consciously stealing from you, but you just do that. I mean, we're all in this together, we all love films, and we all take from each other. God knows we steal from each other. Even when we don't intend to, we find out later, oh my God, I took that from that picture, I can't remember. It's all in your head. So, as I said, we're all in it together.
I think sometimes there is the idea that fandom is broken in some way today, but I look out at the audience tonight and the age group represented, the span of ages represented. It does not feel like that's the case.
The Vegas audience is never fragmented.
Yeah.
The image I have sitting here watching this audience is exactly the same image I've had every time I visit this place. It's all the same eager, happy people who want to be entertained.
Because you see people show up for everything, for all kinds of movies. And I think that's really, I think the fact that this has the life it has, that we can fill this theater tonight, is really amazing, and a real testament to how much fun you guys baked into these movies at the beginning.
And also the audience looks quite a bit like the scene in Gremlins.
Finally, you have I think a phenomenal touch with actors. I love the way you cast from things that you loved when you were growing up, people that you recognize. Can you talk about this cast? You said obviously a lot of them were funny on TV. Were there people that you were really excited to get into the movie though, just because of things you'd seen them in?
I was excited to have any actor that I had ever worked with or seen on TV be in a movie. I mean, I love actors, and I love meeting actors, and even when I didn't hire actors, and just to cast a part, you have to bring in, maybe 5 or 6 or 7, 8 actors, and they're all competing with each other, and they're all people that you know, and they all know each other. So there's a certain tension to that. But the fact is, you want to get the right person for the right part. And in this case, I mean, I had Keenan Wynn, who only worked for 2 days, and was deaf as a post. From riding motorcycles. And he said, "You better yell loud, because I can't hear you." Bradford Dillman was a total professional and matched his, in all the scenes he would match his coffee cups and everything. I'm just starting out, I don't know, I didn't know actors do that. And Kelly Menzies was really lovely. I'd seen her in the Snake movie. And Barbara Steele, of course, was really written for a male. But I said, no, let's get her. I'm Iron Mario, piano, Roger Corman, let's get her. And she was wonderful. And Bruce Gordon, who used to play Frank Nitti on The Untouchables, he's in it. Paul Bartel, who was a friend of mine in my previous movie. Linda Lasky, who I'd seen, who had been in the movie Cannonball with. I mean, there's a lot of good people in this picture, and it was a pleasure working with them. But that's true of every movie I wrote. I never met an actor who let me down, honestly.
I love that, and I think it's one of the things that really, when you talk about the personality, it
I
kind of
shot out Kevin McCarthy, who I made many pictures with, and this is the first time I ever did.
I just recently was rewatching the Burbs, and part of what I love about that film is how that street is so connected to various movie history moments, whether it's the Monsters House or the Ghost of Mr. Chicken, and those feel directly in conversation with what you're doing in that film.
And yeah, I'm sure you'll enjoy it in a new TV series that apparently is coming out, being shot. It's just shot on the same street, but take my word for it, it's nothing like the movie.
All right, well, I think we are going to get started.
We're gonna let them watch the movie now?
Yeah. Thank you so much for